This video was originally presented in 2013 at a time when the 7130 factoring was moved into the tabulation process. Some of the information has been edited. Let's first be reminded that this impacts the Regional A and A-class color guards at WGI regionals. The 7130 factoring targets only the individual analysis equipment and individual analysis movement judges. The scores for the design analysis judge and the two general effect judges go unfactored. As you already know, the A and Regional A classes focus primarily on training and achievement. They have a weighted scoring system that was developed years ago that ensures the emphasis stays on excellence. This happens by taking the point allocation for each subcaption, normally 100 each, and shifting that 100 to 70 for vocabulary, and then weighting and favoring the excellence with 130. This weighted emphasis has proved effective with units now developing vocabularies that are well within the points of development of the performers, ensuring greater achievement and more thorough training as these performers and units progress through the classes. We've moved the sheet back to the 100 and 100 point allotment for each subcaption. However, the weighted emphasis on excellence will now happen in the tabulation process. A judge's numbers for each subcaption will then be factored by the 7130 ratio. It's easiest to think of this as an exchange rate, in the same way that you would exchange money when you were going out of the country. When you visit the country of vocabulary, your dollar's exchange rate is now 70 cents. You get 70 cents on the dollar. That's 7/10 for each point issued. When you visit the country of excellence, however, the exchange rate is much better. For every dollar you earn, you actually get $1.30 back. For every point you earn in excellence, you actually get 1.3 back. One thing that will be important as we discuss this is that we distinguish between the raw score, which is the score or the number that the judges put down based on the 100 and 100 allotment, and the factored score, which is the score that now comes out of tabulation. This is the score that's factored by the 7130 ratio, where your dollars have been transposed into both lesser and greater currency, depending on the subcaption. This new approach has several long-term benefits. Ultimately, this will enable the judge to work more consistently and more intuitively through all the classes. This ensures quality and sets the stage for better judge performance. Also, when considering the 100 and 100 point allocation, this keeps the judge using the same approach in assigning numbers throughout the contest day, while keeping the desired emphasis on excellence specific to the A and Regional A classes. This also addresses an issue of trickle-up of A-class standards into the Open and World classes. We've been addressing this since about 2009. This allows for better numbers management in the vocabulary subcaption by having more numbers available to the judge, now 100 versus 70. And perhaps most importantly, this gives flexibility for the future, should subcaption emphasis change in the future years, perhaps to different percentages. Or it also allows for different factoring of different emphasis as standards evolve, perhaps with different classes. This is seen as we see new opportunities for the Regional A classes and anticipate a growing A class and perhaps even newer classes of competition. In order to understand the full impact of what this means, we have to look at a couple of concepts in numbers that are standard in judge awareness. The first is profiling. Profiling is a spread between subcaptions and ultimately the relationship of these spreads from unit to unit. This is the first way a judge has of telling you about your performance that day relative to its perceived potential. For 2013, instructors can now expect to see a wider range of spreads between vocabulary and excellence. Judges have been asked to utilize this range to better reflect the differences between units at a contest. Judges have been given the opportunity to place excellence over vocabulary as much as 4/10 when a group demonstrates an exceptional performance. These spreads ensure the advantage goes to groups with a strategic focus on excellence while establishing a solid, achievable vocabulary. Now, it's important to understand that each of these subcaptions are factored separately, obviously one greater than the other. This means that when considering the raw bottom line scores, this is before factoring, and then comparing them to the factored bottom line scores, these are factored totals, there may be changes in placement. Here's an example. Understand that we see these shifts in placement as successes. This is telling us that a weighted system is working, that a group with a special emphasis in excellence is perhaps getting the benefit of the doubt, with the numeric ranges in the old weighted box criteria. You see the importance of profiling through this. Now, when considering that bottom lines can switch between the raw total versus the factored total, it's important to know that subcaption ranking never changes. All judges, in all captions, in all classes, have always been asked to rank and rate inside each subcaption. In this factored system, ranking within the subcaption is key. It does not change from raw to factored numbers. Only the values of these numbers shift. So once they're combined, it may cause a shift in the bottom line, with the dollars being exchanged in the country of excellence coming out on top. Here's another thing to note. Because of the factoring, scores will now be given with 2 decimal places. There will be no rounding of numbers. This allows for our factoring, but also allows for even the smallest of distinctions between units to be reflected in the bottom line score. This will allow for more flexibility in the ranking of vocabularies, especially. Another thing to know is that once factored, the sum of the 2 subcaptions create a factored total that cannot be replicated by any other combination of numbers. In simpler language, bottom line ties do not exist in the factored system. The only way to create a bottom line tie is for a judge to assign the exact same subcaption scores. Here's an example of the raw bottom line tie being factored into an eventual placement. Though the spread is small, the benefit goes to the group that scored higher in excellence. Now let's talk about post-show dynamics. Recaps will show the raw subcaption scores and the factored final totals. Raw subcaption scores will keep judges and instructors on the same page in local critique situations. This will also help instructors see their subcaption spreads a little bit more easily when considering the 100 and 100 format, as this will now be consistent in all classes. This also helps us see the judge's intent as the instructor looks at box placement, as both judges and instructors can now reference the same 100 and 100 box criteria reference. This too will be the same in all classes. This also eliminates the need for a separate 70-130 box criteria reference. What you'll need to know is that there'll be some kind of qualifier near the word total, perhaps an asterisk that indicates that these numbers are factored. In this case, subcaption scores will not add up to create the total that is seen on the recap. We realize this is a bit counterintuitive and know that it will take a bit of practice in order to build the habit of seeing this. This combination of raw and factored scores is done to lessen the workload on our local circuit partners that work in these classes in larger percentages, and also to encourage clearer conversations between judges and instructors. This also creates a consistency between the percussion and color guard divisions of WGI. And finally, critique. Remember how we stated that the shifting of placement through the factoring is a sign of success in that our weighted system is working and rewarding excellence over vocabulary. It's possible that you'll experience a shift in ranking through this process. WGI judges are prepared to walk you through how this happens if this is a point of confusion for you.
They're able to explain how the proximity of the excellence number to vocabulary has either made you vulnerable to a group whose excellence was high, perhaps even from a lower competitive neighborhood, or that perhaps you had benefited from the emphasis on excellence, propelling you into the next competitive neighborhood. Either way, the WGI judge's role of teacher makes them available to your further understanding as to how your group is impacted
by this emphasis on excellence. Huh.